Test, test, test. right, guys. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Collar Show from your Blue Collar commentators, also known as the Deep Threats. My name's KJAM, and I'm bringing you a show today. I will be the host, and I also am joined today with the esteemed veteran on the show who goes by the name Wheels. And welcome, Wheels, and thank you for joining the show. How you been doing, Wheels?
Pretty good. Happy to be back. Had some stuff going on, but happy to be back on the show and discussing some off-season topics with you. And let's see where we can go with the dynasty aspect of the show, where I'm hoping we get more viewers.
Have you been keeping yourself busy though? Life been going good though?
Every day.
Dude's making money on the side. He doesn't want to say he's making money on the side. He had to take a step away to make a little bit of money. And I don't blame him because, to be honest with you, life gets a little hard sometimes. And in today's society and economy, you got to do what you got to do, man. You got to work that corner sometimes. And I'm going to be honest, corner's easier than prepping for a show.
Don't be giving my secrets away.
All right, but just going to get on the topics today. And on the docket for today's show, we're going to get into the AFC power rankings. And we're going to talk a little bit about the AFC North and the AFC South. And it's going to be a fun conversation because I know me and you're going to have some heated debates here today. It's gonna get fun. Neither of us have talked about our rankings so far. No. He showed me his rankings, but that was just to do some graphics. I tried my best to not even think about them, and I didn't even ask him a single question why he ranked things where he ranked them. So I'm just being truthful and honest out there. We are going to give some arguments on these rankings. Also, I just want to give you guys a heads up that there were some signings in the offseason. We might go over a little bit of those when we go over our rankings.
And trades.
Yeah, and there's some trades recently.
Darius Smith of the Browns is a big trade.
I guess that was a trade. That wasn't a signing. You are correct. You're correct.
I know we don't try to harp on the Browns too much, but that's a big trade for that defense because he will be on the opposite side of Myles Garrett, which he's considered an outside linebacker, but he's going to be playing D-end opposite of Myles Garrett, which is huge for that defense because with the draft that you had with some of the linebackers and D tackles you drafted, they revamped that entire defense in 1 year. And I give a lot of props to Andrew Berry for what he did in the offseason and the draft.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Like, Andrew Berry's had a phenomenal offseason. The dude has done great. And it's hard because I've knocked him constantly because for some reason the talent doesn't seem to transcend. But before we get into those divisions, what we're going to do is, because that's going to be our controversial takes of the day, we are going to jump our way into the AFC South. And we're going to go over these rankings. What I'm going to do for you guys, I'm going to put up on the board. I'm going to show you his rankings. I'm going to show you my rankings. And this way you guys can kind of see where we have a little bit of controversial arguments. So let me jump over to Wheels, and I want to show you guys his AFC South rankings. And go ahead, Wheels. Tell them what you got.
So the Jags, obviously, I have finishing top of their division. I have them winning their division because I think with the acclamation of Calvin Ridley this season that you traded for him, he comes back healthy. I know he had a year off, but from the reports that I have read, he stayed healthy and was training the entire season when he was suspended. So it's the smartest thing you can do. Just get ready for next year. I think that's huge for them. The Colts, as much as I dislike Anthony Richardson, the talent on that team, I think will propel him to be better than I think a lot of people realize he may, start out as. I think he's going to be a mid to a lower tier quarterback fantasy wise, but for actual football, I don't see him being too bad, to start the year. But time will tell with that. The Texans, I have them back of the pack. I mean, CJ Stroud, you don't know what you're going to get with that team. You got a lot of new faces. You got some veterans coming onto that team. So I have them third. I have them, I would say, maybe winning 7 games this year, and that's on the high end. And then the Tennessee Titans, I do not like at all. They didn't really revamp their offense that much. They lost Taylor Lewan. They got an offensive line. They kind of added some pieces there, but wide receiver wise, you don't have a lot of depth there. And running back, you added Tajay Spears, who I absolutely love behind Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry's getting old. You got Ryan Tannehill, who also is getting old, and you drafted Will Levis, who I think will play at some point this year, given if Ryan Tannehill is injured or just isn't performing well.
All right. I mean, I kind of like those takes, but I'm going to jump into mine, and I'm going to give you guys mine for the South. And it's funny because I think
we haven't flip-flopped.
But it's funny because if you look at Ryan's, he said switch Titans and Colts. And it's funny because I did that. So And the only reason it's one of those arguments, right? The perennial team, like the Titans seem to do it because they have Vrabel,
but they've never been able to prove it in the playoffs.
But it's Vrabel, but it's still Vrabel.
Yeah,
so like
a great defense.
And the Colts are also the same way. They haven't been able to prove it in the playoffs either. So ever since Peyton Manning, right, best regular season quarterback who's only won it once with the Colts,
they've been grasping at quarterbacks ever since.
Right. Well, I mean, they had Andrew Luck, but he still struggled.
I mean, you take Andrew Luck out of there, who was around for what, 5 seasons, 5, 6 seasons?
5, 6 seasons, I think so.
After that, they've had nothing on that team except mid or older guys. I mean, you had Phillip Rivers, you had Matt Ryan. I mean, you just got guys that are at the end of their career.
Carson Wentz, don't forget about him.
Yeah, Carson Wentz, another guy who just he doesn't perform well. You've had C-level quarterbacks, I hate to say. I mean, Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers are awesome, but they didn't have the juice left. They didn't have much left in the tank.
Well, so hold on. Let me give you what I was going to take. I like to do mine backwards instead of forwards because the reason why I do it that way is just because like it's a little more controversial. Because I'll tell you right now, I have the Texans as 4, but I don't have a bad thing to say about the Texans.
They're a good
team. Like here's what I have for the Texans. They had the 22nd ranked offensive line last year, which. Yeah, that's bad, but to be honest, they're not that bad of an offensive line. I think Davis Mills held on the ball too long. So with no improvements here, to be honest, they did add Juice Scruggs in the draft in the second round. That's good. That helps the center position, and hopefully that gives CJ Stroud the ability to get the ball, and it gives some chemistry in the offseason with those guys. But CJ Stroud also got drafted at 2nd overall in the draft.
So he's proven now.
Consensus for us was the best draft pick. Well, not best draft pick. It was the best quarterback coming out of the draft.
It was our number one show consensus quarterback.
Right. And then he's slinging the rock to Robert Woods, Amari Rodgers, John Mechie III, Tank Dell, Xavier Hutchinson, Nico Collins, Noah Brown, and many more. I'm just kidding. Like literally all those guys.
Mechie.
Literally all those guys are on the roster though, and some may struggle to get on the roster. And typically, Houston does this with offenses. I talked to you this before the show. Is that like they just throw a whole bunch of darts, hoping one of them hits the center. Like that's all they do. If you look at their running backs the last 2-3 years, they had like 15 running backs on the roster during regular season. And it was just disgusting. So I have a feeling they might be doing this again.
I do 100%. I mean, you try to build the team as best as you can with what you have available, and that's what they're doing. I mean, with CJ Stroud, I mean, you got a young quarterback you got 2 or 1 veteran wide receiver. You got John Mechie coming, who's essentially, this will be his rookie year because he was out because he had cancer. So, I mean, there's a lot of faces that that fans may not have seen that they'll get, more screen time and playing time and stuff like that. Dameon Pierce, we talked about him missing 4 games, but we think that was because of...
Yeah, and John Mechie was highly touted, right?
Yeah.
Dameon Pierce, we had that argument about him possibly sitting out. I don't remember an injury at the end of the season.
I honestly, it's been a while, but that would make sense because why keep your rookie running back in when he can risk getting injured for games that no longer matter for your team?
I completely agree with you. But also don't forget they signed Devin Singletary in the offseason. I think what that does, and a lot of people don't understand this, what Devin Singletary adds to this offense is the passing game. They threw the ball to Dameon Pierce 39 times. Now, he did receive 30 of those, which to me blows my mind that they didn't throw the ball to him more.
Yeah.
Because he received majority of those. But to be honest, like that, he didn't seem to excel in that position. But he did excel at running. I think he had like 220 carries for 1,000 yards, almost like 940 yards.
He's a great downhill runner. He's a very aggressive running back.
Well, and you even said he's dangerous.
Yeah, he's a dangerous running back. But the problem is, I mean, the Texans are kind of, I don't want to say they're in rebuild mode because what they did, that they were kind of in win now mode, but it's first year rookie head coach. You got a rookie quarterback. So are you really going to put it all together?
Don't be knocking D'Amico like that, baby. Don't be knocking D'Amico.
I love D'Amico. I hope they finish second, but with who they have on their schedule and all the new rookies that they brought in, and CJ Stroud being...
You know what? Let me get through that. While I get through the rest of this, why don't you pull up the schedule, and we can kind of go over the NFC South schedule, because I think that would be interesting to see if we still believe in our power rankings after seeing the schedule, because the schedule was released a few days ago. I think it was last Thursday the schedule was released, and we can kind of talk about that a little bit. But so the Texans, not only did they do all that in their offense, they did a bunch on their defense in the draft. I think they have 2 defensive backs who are very underrated and could be the best in the NFL or top 10 in the NFL at their positions. They have I apologize. They have Jalen Petrie as their safety and Derek Stingley Jr., who got injured at the end of the last season and was probably going to be the defensive rookie of the year if it wasn't for that injury. He was doing way better than Sauce Gardner was at the beginning of the season. So the only thing they were missing on this defense was the ability to rush the passer, and they went and did that at the third overall pick with Will Anderson in the draft. I think that was astounding. To me, this team could have had, depending on who is ranking this draft, because obviously the Eagles had the easiest draft because they had no needs and could just draft the best player available.
Guys fell to them.
Yeah, I mean, they could just draft the best player available, whereas the Texans took a complete advantage of every situation and got, I think, stud players at each position.
Yeah, I mean, they had to have hit on every single one of their draft picks. And like we said, so the C.J. Stroud was the only draft pick that was the Houston Texans' own draft pick. Every other single draft pick was acquired via
We said
trade.
that before the show.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, we said that before the show.
That's right, we did, which is pretty astounding. I mean, a lot of people will think that Will Anderson, you gave up a lot for him, but not if you think he's your guy.
Yeah, well, and I don't. Do you remember the comp? Do you remember the comp we had to Will Anderson? What was the comp for Will Anderson? It was man, that one's got me going crazy.
It wasn't.
I'm trying to see if I don't know if I have comps sitting here at all. Probably not. No, I don't have comps. So
I can't remember.
I can't remember the comp. Ryan probably knows the comp in the chat. So if you remember the comp, just let us know, Ryan. I appreciate it. But to be honest, like, I have so many good things to say about the Texans, but they're still my fourth team. It's just so hard to go from 3-13-1 to just jump up in that in the roster. And you had them at 4-2, right?
Or I had them at 7. I have 7 wins. That's high end for me.
But I'm just saying you had them third.
Yeah.
Okay, you had them third.
Titans are fourth for me just because I think I don't want to. It's gonna sound dumb, but I think their luck has run out. I think Ryan Tannehill has hit his ceiling, and Will Levis is breathing down his back, and Will Levis has never backed down, and he's gonna. I mean, I think it's gonna be a quarterback controversy. Maybe week 7, week 6. I mean, we got to look at their schedule, but I would not be surprised given if Ryan Tannehill struggles, we see Will Levis this year.
I mean, I don't. I personally see Will Levis coming in 4 or 5, week 4 or 5, just because depending on where this team goes. But let me jump into the next team because I have the Colts at 3, and you had the Colts at 4.
Nah.
If you had the Texans at 3,
no, I had Jags, Colts, Texans.
Oh, so yeah, the Colts at 2.
Yeah, and I don't like Anthony Richardson.
So, and I have the Colts at 3. So, and the only reason I have the Colts at 3 is just because they did struggle last year, and I see the Titans still being good. And you and I can have that'll be our debate for this division. But I see Anthony Richardson. Now, why quarterback was not the issue in the Colts. The issue was the defense, which was a top 10 defense the year prior.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened to that defense, to be completely honest with you. But you know what you did do? You went out and got a head coach by the name of Steichen, who knows how to take a defense and do something with it. He also knows what he's doing with a running quarterback. He's paid attention to the team that he came from, which was the Eagles, who had Jalen Hurts. And I think Jalen Hurts was not the highest prospect going into last year. No. And that team had built up something on Jalen Hurts by throwing him a whole bunch of assets and said, hey, if you can't do it now, we're counting you out. Yeah. And he could do it. And he did it. And he almost won a Super Bowl on it. So if they didn't change the turf on this poor guy, he probably won the Super Bowl. But that's a whole nother conspiracy theory and an argument we can get into is Turfgate. Outside of that, though, I'll just go over that offense really quick. You got Anthony Richardson throwing the ball to Michael Pittman Jr., Isaiah McKenzie, Alec Pierce, and they drafted Josh Downs in the third or fourth round.
I think third round, yeah.
I think it was the third round. They also have Malik Turner. So they've got 5 wide receivers who I think are capable. They're not the best out there, but Michael Pittman had a very good year, and Alec Pierce was drafted last year, and he came on pretty strong. So I like all these guys. Then you have Jelani Woods, and then they drafted Will Mallory this year, and Will Mallory is a slot. He's a slot guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's just a big slot. So I think Jelani Woods is the big target in the end zone, and he might actually get some touchdowns this year because he had some games where he had some touchdowns last year, but for some reason they didn't utilize him correctly. And then you have the ancient, Mo Alley Cox, who just can't seem to fall off a roster, and the dude's like 45 years old.
He reminds me of Mercedes Lewis.
Both those guys just need to retire. Or become a tight end coach.
That too.
Stay off the roster. You're killing these guys as 53-man rosters. Outside of that, the Colts offensive line was ranked at 11th in 2022, which is very good, even though they struggle keeping Matt Ryan on his feet at the beginning of the season. So it's a good thing they just went out and got a mobile quarterback, right?
It fits the mold for what they're trying to build. And you got JT obviously as your running back, which we already talked about him, injured, but we think it was more of a smart decision for the future.
Yeah, I mean Jonathan Taylor, to be honest, there's a lot of running backs in this league, and I think when teams figure it out and they have a good running back, that they go, hey, let's not ruin the guy, because this talent only comes along probably once every 3-4 years you get a running back at Jonathan Taylor's talent. Yeah. Now, granted, in the last few years, there has been some very good talent at running backs, but it depends on how they get abused. Like Najee Harris is a stud of a talent at running back, but this dude's touched the ball, I think, the most in the NFL in his first three seasons.
And he played behind one of the worst offensive lines last year.
Right, but my point is he's touched the ball the most.
Oh, yeah.
The most. Yeah. And granted, he hasn't had injury, but what does that mean when a guy touches the ball 500 times a season? That is insanity that he's touching the ball as much as he is, and the quarterback doesn't touch that ball that much.
You're waiting for something to happen. I mean, I hate to say it, but you are. I mean, it's a ticking time bomb at the end of the day.
And they didn't even draft a running back this year, so the Steelers are going to struggle in that situation, because I love Najee, but I just don't know if he could stay healthy, because it's a lot of abuse. Yeah. Now, I said the same thing about Derrick Henry, and sometimes guys are capable of doing it. I just don't know.
Derrick Henry's a different breed, though. So we talked about this earlier in a couple of shows back. It might have been a while, but we talked about guys who touch the ball so many times they usually miss so many games the following year. And I think you're going to see that with some of these guys this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Jacobs, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry. You're going to...
Johnny, tell me that isn't crazy, though. 750 total touches in his first 2 seasons.
That's insane.
That is insanity for any running back.
And I hate to say it.
And I think his first year was 420, so that means his second year was 330. Mm-hmm. And 330 is high for a running back. And didn't we have this conversation a couple weeks back to where we said, usually running backs have about 300 touches, they get injured the year after?
That's what I was just saying, because, like I said, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, I hate to say it, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, some of these guys, I mean, you look at Saquon, who's been injured a lot of his career, and he touched the ball. I mean, he was the offense, pretty much. Him and Daniel Jones were the 2 offensive pieces on the team last year. But, I mean, like you said, a lot of these guys have only come around once in a blue moon or once every 3 or 4 years. I mean, Nick Chubb. I mean, then you got Alvin Kamara, who was a 3rd-round draft pick, but he didn't do much last year. Another guy who was injured, missed some games. But running back, I say running back's a dime a dozen, but not with some of these guys like, Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is not a dime a dozen running back. He is a top-tier running back.
Ryan, I know what you said in the chat. So, Johnny, what Johnny said in the chat is he's not efficient. I don't agree with that personally. I think Najee was efficient. I just think, and we're getting a little on a tangent. We'll get back into the South real quick. I don't think it was an efficiency thing with Najee. I think the issue was that the offensive line, like you said, was shit.
And you had a rookie
just complete and garbage. You had rookie quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph. He was there the last year. Ben was there, right?
Yeah, Ben was there last year, but Ben was...
So Ben was like a shadow of a quarterback.
Ben wasn't Ben. He was a shell of himself.
Just an FYI, they re-signed Mason Rudolph for another year. But it's funny because Najee is good. And I like that, build forward tough. But that also stands for found on road dead. So what does that actually mean, Ryan? But so let me get into that second team for me, which is the Titans. And the reason why I have the Titans where I have the Titans is they're perennial. You have your perennial guys who just seem to find a way to make it every year. And then on top of that, what they do is you have Derrick Henry, you have Tannehill, and both these guys have been efficient, the most efficient at what they do.
100%. I couldn't agree more with that. But my biggest thing is the talent around them is increasing, whereas they haven't increased with their team that much in those years. Because
So when you say the talent around them is increasing, you mean by the teams around them?
yeah, the teams the teams in their division that they play twice a year.
Okay.
Because
I'm completely okay with what you're saying. Yeah,
there's 3 new quarterbacks in that division.
But the question is, like, have the Titans got worse? Because I don't think they have.
The Titans have stayed the same.
I don't think they have.
They've been. I don't want to. They've been good, but the problem is with me is they need another wide receiver.
You say they stay the same, but you put them low.
Because I think the talent with the other teams are going to they're going to be overshadowed by, which it's a hot take. I'm going out on.
No, I don't think it's a hot take. I actually think it's a very accurate take. The only issue I have is sometimes it's hard to just bet against perennial teams.
100. I get it.
And there's just a winning culture, and they have a winning culture on that team, even though they struggled to win the playoff game. They have a winning culture on that team.
Yeah,
although I do remember a team that they do beat. And I think it was the Ravens, but I think.
Might have been.
But here's his argument, and I don't disagree with it, but I still think they're capable of doing good. This team is running with the. Hey, this one's for you, Ryan, because I think you really like this one. They're running for Westbrook Akine as their number 2 wide receiver. Treylon Burks is their number 1 wide receiver, and then Ryan, you ready for this one? Chris Moore. Chris Moore is on the roster from the Houston Texans. And I know you know who Chris Moore is because Chris Moore is your boy. And you called out the 2 fantasy games that this dude went off on. And he is now on the roster of the Tennessee Titans. And I don't know where this snuck up on us, but we never saw this signing. But this is currently their roster. So they also added a tight end in Josh Wiley.
Yep.
And then they also have Chikozia Mankonkwo, which I know you guys like to say rare metals, and you guys ripped me a new one because I actually know the dude's name.
We like him. I've liked him for a while, even before I was in the show when I was in the chat. I love him.
I mean, Chikozia is one of those guys who just came out of kind of the blue, Maryland. Maryland, what is going on with Maryland these last few years? They have put up some players that are
Diggs came out of Maryland. That was kind of that was.
Is that the start of it? Was that the start of all the Maryland shit?
Diggs was a huge draft pick.
Because this is crazy coming out of Maryland lately. We might have to watch more Maryland games.
So I think part of the reason that with that is football has increased in popularity.
Hold on, Ryan. Who's suspended for gambling? Chris Moore? I don't think anybody that we said was suspended for gambling.
No, Detroit, I believe, is the most of those teams, and Washington.
I'd have to look that up. Well, why don't you look that up while I get into the reason why I got the Jags at first, which is probably the most obvious. The Jags were the one team that went to the playoffs last year. To be honest, we don't think they got any worse. If only that team has gotten better. I do think their receiving core is a little bit overrated because everybody's assuming that Calvin Ridley's going to come back and be a stud. Let's be honest here. Calvin Ridley was incapable or uncapable or not capable of being a number 1 wide receiver in Atlanta. He's a solid number 2.
Yeah.
Now, Christian Kirk proved he could be a number 1, and I don't disagree. And then Calvin Ridley's a number 2. Zay's the veteran. And then I think there is probably it'll be a very good mesh of receivers. But I think they all have a similar skill set because they're very good route runners, most of these guys. So I like that situation. Now, the one thing that me and you were talking about before the show.
Moore, Ryan, correct. CJ Moore from the Detroit. Him and Quintez Cephas were suspended.
Okay. So he's not the right guy. Okay.
Same last name, wrong guy.
Right. Yeah. Chris Moore was a guy that you liked last year. I remember. I remembered because Danielle picked him up in the offseason, and she's like, oh, my God, he actually scored like 30 points for me that week. She was so ecstatic. And actually, I think she won her game because of your call at fantasy that week. So it was pretty funny. But so the Jacksonville Jaguars tight end, you said you like Brenton Strange, and you think that Brenton Strange actually could replace Evan Ingram or no?
I don't want to say replace, but I think I think they're putting pressure on Evan Ingram. I know he's on a
like it lights a fire under his ass is your thought process.
Evan Ingram, he popped off last year. He's still young. I think he's 25 going into this year, which is pretty young for a tight end. He played, obviously.
Hold on. We need to admonish Wheels for this one because Evan Ingram is 28.
Is he really?
Not even close to 25. Evan Ingram didn't do anything until last year.
I'm thinking of Noah Fant, then that might be.
Noah Fant's 25.
Okay,
Noah Fant is very young. Yeah. Yes.
That's who I'm thinking of. Never mind. But yeah, Evan Ingram didn't do anything when he was with the Giants.
You just show some emotion on that face for just sucking.
I'm sorry. But yeah, so Evan Ingram didn't do anything with the Giants at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. Evan Ingram had a very good last year with this team, but he was not a standout on the Giants. And actually, they got rid of him for that exact reason. And then they went and got Darren Waller, who I don't think is going to be any better than
Daniel Bellinger stock right now. Go buy Daniel Bellinger stock.
You can get Daniel Bellinger for cheap. And actually, a lot of people probably have him rostered just because of last year he actually showed up. So,
if he doesn't get poked in the eye, I think he goes off that last year. Because he missed, I think, 4 or 5 games.
Wait a minute. Hold on. He missed games from being poked in the eye?
Yeah, I think his retina or something was all messed up.
See, this is why blowjobs are not good for men. Just be careful. Always wear a face shield.
Don't ask Deshaun Watson about that.
Deshaun wears a towel. Relax. All right. So this wasn't too controversial. So let me just readdress that really quick. So this is what I have. I have Jacksonville at 1, Titans at 2, Colts at 3, Texans at 4. And then we'll jump over to Wheels. And Wheels has
Jags, Colts, Texans, Titans.
So we're slightly different. Yeah. I don't think it's too bad, to be honest with you. But I think that in reality, I think Jags first, and that's only because they've only shown improvement year in and year out. And Trevor Lawrence is their franchise guy.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I didn't think Trevor Lawrence was going to be this good. I did not like Trevor Lawrence coming out of college. I was dead wrong about Trevor Lawrence. Dead wrong. And I think obviously the reason why Evan Ingram did so well last year is because of Trevor Lawrence. But Trevor Lawrence loves his tight ends from about 25 yards into the red zone.
So let me tell you right now, that's accountability right there. You pretty much just said
I was dead
wrong. That you were dead wrong.
100%.
And so what we're trying to tell you guys is that we will admit when we screw up and we suck. So for anybody out there that's ever watched the show, we make sure we constantly come back.
And I also said I thought Xavier Hutchinson was a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and he got drafted, and I think...
Wow, that is bold, Aaron. That is very bold, saying Trevor Lawrence was a fluke last year.
No,
I think here's the thing, right?
They're only building up around him.
First thing, I hate him being called T-Law.
Okay.
Trevor Lawrence. It's not a you thing. It's just what's her name? What's the girl's name that played in oh my God. Everybody I can't remember her damn name. But everybody called her last name's Lawrence.
I don't know.
Why can't I remember her name? But someone says T-Law, it drives.
You hate acronyms pretty much.
My first thought process is I go to her. My thought is T-Law, and I think of her every single time. Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence. Okay.
So I think of her all the time. But anyways, color Sunshine from. I agree. It is Sunshine. It is Sunshine. It should be Sunshine over T-Law.
People call them Jennifer.
Yeah, Jennifer, because everybody calls her J-Law. So when you talk, when you reference, it's J-Law. But anyways, I don't think that Trevor Lawrence was a fluke. I think what happened is they went out and got Christian Kirk, right? They got him a weapon, and then they got him,
which everybody laughed at. Nonetheless, I laughed at that signing with how much they
got him a coach that wasn't fingering J-Law.
And kicking punters.
And kicking kickers.
Or kicking
kickers after stretching.
I mean, that last year for the Jags, that was a huge turnaround so fast for that team. I think they're only going to build up, and you got Calvin Ridley, who is going to be wide receiver 2 on that team. You got Evan Ingram coming back. You have Travis Etienne. I wish you wouldn't have traded James Robinson. I like James Robinson. But
hold on, these guys are harassing me in the chat. They don't ever remember Jennifer Lawrence be calling J-Law.
You might be thinking of J-Lo.
No. So here's the thing. We're going to get deep into my personal chats. So we have a chat where people call dibs on famous women. So if you get to meet them, we can't touch them. We have to pass them on to that other person. And Jennifer Lawrence, ever since the fappening, has been called J-Law. So I'm just saying, I'm throwing that out there.
Who's your dibs?
Mine. I've got a type. So like my wife is my type. So like there's certain people like Anna Kendrick. Like there's just certain people like short, brunette, no tits and ass. Like I have a type. I have a type. Calvin Ridley, number 2. What do you mean? Come on, bro.
Calvin Ridley is the number 2 on that team.
He will be the number 2 on that team. And actually,
you don't pay Christian Kirk money to be the number 2 on that team.
Yeah,
and he traded
2 seconds. I think
2 seconds, if that, for Calvin Ridley, who is I think a year or 2 younger than Kirk. But Kirk last year showed that he.
Actually, I think Calvin Ridley might be older than Kirk. Hold on. Because Calvin Ridley actually came into the league. He came into the league.
Too young.
Calvin Ridley is 28 years old.
Oh, so Kirk?
Because he came. So Ryan and I talk about this all the time. Calvin Ridley came into the league at like 25.
Oh, so he was a senior, red shirt.
Yeah, he came into the league pretty late. And actually, if you go back and look at Calvin Ridley in Atlanta, he could not be a number 1. When Julio got hurt, Calvin did not do very well. Calvin is a solid number 2. He's a Juju Smith-Schuster. He's a solid number 2.
And in fantasy, I will take Christian Kirk all day long over Calvin Ridley. That's just me personally. But like we said, you're not paying Christian Kirk money to sit and be in the number 2. They're not going to do that. And Christian Kirk showed last year. He nutted up and said, "You guys want to laugh at this contract? I know what I'm worth. Now let me show you why I'm worth that."
Yeah, I mean he set the value for all wide receivers because that contract was huge, and then he actually showed up to the plate. Yeah. Now, do I think Christian Kirk can do that year in and year out? I don't know. So now, if you want to tell me that Christian Kirk is the fluke and not Trevor Lawrence, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
I think if anybody is the true fluke on this team, and I know we were just talking about it, I think it would be Evan Ingram.
Oh yeah,
and that's why they signed
hands
him
down. Evan Ingram's a fluke.
And that's why they tagged him because let's see if you can do it again. Let's see.
Now? So here's the question, Aaron. Are you saying he's not a number 2? That he's worse than a number 2? That like Zay Jones is the number 2, and then Calvin Ridley's the number 3? I don't know if I would. I don't know if I disagree with that. I don't know if I disagree with that.
Zay Jones was a good safety valve as a veteran last year for that team.
I'm okay with that argument. Is that Ridley's the 3 and not the 1?
Yeah,
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
I think Ridley is closer to the 3 than he is the 1. Personally.
I'm okay with that. I think you gave up 2 seconds for a 3 though. Like that's a lot to give up. I mean, we're giving up. The Browns are giving up a second. And everybody's calling Elijah Moore number 2.
Just trade Shakir in a second for Jerry Jeudy, man.
All right, so Zay Jones. I'm okay with. Like I said, I'm okay with Zay being the number 2. The only issue is like, and now I'm looking at it, and it's funny because this is actually an older receiving core.
Yeah, so you
got Calvin Ridley 28, Zay Jones at 27, and Christian Kirk's the youngest guy there, getting paid the most at 26, I think.
But it's not a bad move because you're not paying those older guys much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you're paying Calvin Ridley. I have never looked at it. I've never looked at it. But what I'm going to do is while he's looking that up, we're going to jump into the AFC North. This is going to be the more controversial one, and that is just because that me and Wheels constantly have arguments about who lands where based on quarterback play. And we all know that this division is a very, very high-ranked division when it comes to quarterbacks, whether they performed last year or not. And that goes for all quarterbacks in this division.
Yeah, you're not
just one.
I think.
What's he making?
It's goofy.
Well, I mean, just
his base salary this year is $11 million.
So Calvin Ridley's making $11 million?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty good amount of money.
This is his last year because he's an unrestricted free agent next year.
Okay, so he's still on his rookie contract probably. That's probably why it's where it's at.
Yeah, because he was suspended last year, so I think it
postponed it for a year. Yeah.
Which I think is dumb. I don't think you should make that money at all.
Oh, no. What happens is you don't make money in that year, but you make money. He got fined. Didn't he get fined a good amount of money for that gambling?
That was a stupid suspension anyways. Let's be honest. I think that was a dumb suspension.
I don't believe gambling's off the field nonsense unless you're gambling on yourself. That is off the field nonsense.
So not to get sidetracked, but if you don't think gambling is happening in the NFL with NFL players, you're dead wrong.
Oh my God! Picket number 1, Mayor. Are you a Steelers fan, Mayor?
They have bookies that they're paying to make bets for them.
Obviously not, because the bet's in their name. How'd they find out?
Because Calvin Ridley's stupid.
And 7 Detroit players. Or 6, whatever it was. I don't remember.
They played for Detroit, so let's be honest. It's not,
there's not a lot going up there in Detroit. Just throwing that out there.
They're way high. So
all right, so we're gonna jump into we're gonna go wheels first again. Because mine is a way more controversial than yours. I'm gonna tell you that right now. So we're gonna jump into wheels as AFC North rankings.
So I'm gonna do what you do. Steelers are 4th. I do not like their draft. I do not like DeJuan Jones, where they drafted him. I'm not a huge fan of that. They need more help on that offense and defense, because if with TJ Watt missing, they cannot win without TJ Watt on that defense. And they showed that last year. And yeah, you added Joey Porter Jr. I understand that, which is a huge add in the secondary. But you didn't add much to your defensive line to help TJ Watt. And that's what scares me. And then speaking to injuries, you go to the Ravens, where you have Lamar Jackson, who, so he misses, we'll go 2-3 games a year injury. Hopefully that stops. I want to see him healthy. He can be a top 10, top 5 quarterback when healthy. But then you go to Odell, who you're paying a crap ton of money to, who has showed that he is not a number 1 wide receiver and hasn't been able to do it. So that's why you drafted Zay Flowers in the first round. And, I mean, so those 2 injury-prone players on that team makes me move the Ravens down. And, yeah, you can call me a homer because I have the Browns second, but I think Deshaun Watson will be a top 10, if not top 5 quarterback this year, because you bring everybody back on the offense and more that you drafted. You rebuilt the entire defense. You added a competent defensive coordinator who has been known to build up defenses year in and year out for when he's played. And I think they are a 11-win team, 12-win team.
Who?
The Browns.
This year?
Yes. This year, I think they're 11, 12-win team. With the way we have the schedule with a 5-week bye, which we absolutely hate. And we think that, I know a lot of people may not like this, but it is capable and possible that maybe all divisions should take the bye at the same time. So the AFC North takes a bye, the AFC South takes a bye, yada, 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 all at the same time. Make it as fair as possible, because there's some teams that don't have byes till week 12, 11, 13. And then that pushes us to Cincinnati, which my biggest fear with Cincinnati, I think they're going to do fine, is Joe Mixon. But you have Chase Brown, who I love, coming out of Illinois, I think he was drafted from.
He was out of
which
Illinois.
I think he will step into place and be just fine for that team, because behind him you have Chris Evans, who I thought I liked him, but you said that he was never able to prove it when Joe Mixon has been injured and P. Ryan was ahead of him, which does make sense, because I was looking at his stats, and even when Joe Mixon was injured, he just never was able to, overstep P. Ryan, who is pretty much a blocking running back. He's not a huge offensive threat.
Hey,
but I mean,
hey Ryan, I know you're in chat. Can you tell me whatchamacallit's MVP season? Lamar Jackson. I want to say it was 2019, but it might be 2020.
Second year. It was 2019.
I don't remember. Can you tell me? Is that all you have for that division?
Cincinnati. Then you obviously add. So you got obviously you have Jamar Chase. You have T. Higgins, who is the number 1 wide receiver on that team. Tyler Boyd, Andre Savas from Princeton, and Charlie Jones, which Charlie Jones and Andre Savas are probably going to take over for Tyler Boyd.
Dude's hyping my guys. He's hyping my guys.
This is Tyler
He's killing
Boyd's
me.
last year, I think, on that team, because he's another guy who's never been able to be the number 2, even when T. Higgins wasn't there. Tyler Boyd has never been able to take that next leap for that team, so I think he's gone.
Yeah, I don't disagree too much there, right?
My biggest fear for Pittsburgh is you didn't add a lot of depth on defense or build up a lot, because with TJ Watt going out, you were just.
They added a little bit. They had a little bit on defense, but the issue with the Steelers is that what they did was they thought that where they lacked, and they do.
Yeah,
it's where they lack is offense. It's offensive line majority.
I love Kenny Pickett. I hope Kenny Pickett becomes what I think.
I don't love Kenny Pickett.
I love Kenny Pickett coming out. I was super high on him. And Aaron knows that. I talked him up. I told you guys that I'll take, if I'm wrong, I give a quarterback 3 years, and then that's it.
Yeah, you gave Malik 1.
Well, Will Levis got drafted. So that just shows.
You called him before Will Levis got drafted. You called Malik a bum.
I said Malik was
I
a
could
bum.
go back to the show.
I said Malik was a bum when he was drafted. I said he was going to be the worst quarterback in that league. And I believe.
Wasn't he out of like some like small school Liberty? He was out of Liberty.
Yeah.
Liberty.
You want to know why he was so talked about is because.
He had a great pro day.
And everybody was comparing him to another running quarterback that came out of a smaller school named Louisville.
Oh, no. No way.
But he's not even in the same realm.
No way.
Lamar Jackson is NFL, whereas Malik Willis is XFL. Let's be honest.
He's like CFL. The XFL is better than the CFL.
Say CFL, but I was trying to keep it in America, okay?
I mean, Johnny Manziel can't even play in the XFL.
I hope... But my rankings are based on what.
No, hold on, Aaron. I'm not gonna let that go. Tyler Boyd is never, ever capable of being a number one.
No,
solid number two. Yeah. Will never be a number one. If he was a number one, Jamar Chase would have never been touched. Never, because T. Higgins is capable of being number one, and Tyler Boyd is a number two, and I'm okay with that. But when they saw Jamar Chase, it was like, there's no way that I can't do this.
Well, and Joe Burrow said, please go get me Jamar Chase. And when your quarterback
when the most sacked quarterback in the NFL says, go get me a receiver, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird.
But he played with them.
I get it.
And T. Higgins, I get it. There's always that controversy. T. Higgins makes Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase makes T. Higgins. But honestly, let's say they're 1A, 1B.
A quarterback's needing at least 3 years. I don't disagree with you.
2, 3 years, but I've always given him 3 years. I gave Baker 3 years before I griped on him.
I mean, Baker's been on 4 teams in 1 year.
I didn't like Baker the year we drafted him. I liked Josh Allen.
Let's have some fun, because this is where it's going to get fun. And I'm going to be honest with you. Be prepared. So here's what I have right now, and I'm going to explain. I'm going to explain the reasonings.
I don't hate it.
And it's not going to be like the most crazy reasonings, but I'm going to explain it. So the Steelers at 4. We all know why I have the Steelers at 4. They're the worst team in the division. It's very easy to say. This is the worst quarterback on this team.
And this is the worst quarterback
out of the 4 in the division. Now, you could argue that, yes, that Deshaun Watson had worst 6 games, but let's look at the career of a player. This is the worst quarterback in the division.
And you weren't showing full Deshaun Watson because you don't want to give them film. I know they have some prior film on him, but why show them everything? We're trying some different things with him.
I also don't disagree with you that when TJ's not on the field, this team sucks.
Yes.
And they didn't really do anything at end in the draft. Actually, if I look at their draft, see if I can find it really quick.
They did the opposite of the Browns.
So if I look at their draft, they tackle cornerback Joey Porter, right? So they did do something there.
Which I love because his father played with the Steelers.
Keanu Benton, who I believe will be a nice piece, but is not going to substitute. Oh, you know what? You know who they did get? Oh, no, they didn't. No. Oh, no. I'm thinking of somebody else. So that was it. So, they really kind of focused on that offense, which I'm okay with that because that's what they needed.
Offense is, it's a passing league, so I get it. But at the end of the day, like I said, TJ Watt needs help on that team because without
Aaron, I will explain why number 1. Just hold on a second. All right. So the reasons why I have the Steelers where they have them. Okay, and I already told you that. It's quarterback, it's a defense. Minka's getting old. They didn't do too much at safety. They haven't added depth in these positions. So these guys are literally one play away from getting injured at their age.
Yeah, 100%.
Ryan, I get everybody has a capability of getting injured. That's not my argument. My argument is these guys are getting older, and they're expecting a lot of these guys, and they're expecting every down out of these guys, and that's a problem. Moving on from the Steelers. I think it's very easy that we could say the Steelers are 4th, and I think a lot of people have them at 4th, which is weird because obviously Tomlin has never had a losing season, and they're perennial guys. I get it.
I hate hearing that conversation.
I get it.
It's beating a dead horse.
I'm going to explain to you why I have the Cincinnati Bengals 3, because obviously the Cincinnati Bengals has proven that they've been in the first division in the last, I think, 2 years. Here's the reason why I have them at 3.
They haven't played hard competition in division.
They now have the hardest schedule, right?
That's your proof.
In the AFC North. They did not address safety.
No, not at all. With losing Jesse Bates.
Yeah, they did not address safety. They have suspect corners. The only thing they have is that front line, which I would agree that if you can get to the quarterback quick, that's great. That is great.
And you need a front line to play in the AFC North. The AFC North is a punch mouth division. It has been. I don't want to say
it's a defensive division. It's a defensive division.
Years. You look at the AFC North and you always think of What do you think of defensive line, or do you think of secondaries? When you
I think of a hard ground and pound in a defensive game.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the AFC North has been, because come late November, December, look at the weather. And yet, none of our teams play in domes in this division.
I do not have Nick Chubb as a top contributor. Man, you are hyped.
He's angry.
Oh my God.
Aaron is a Jets fan.
So here's the thing. Like, there's a reason why I have this situation, and
go back to explaining yourself.
So the Bengals do have Jordan Battle. They did draft him, which we all liked, but I don't see him as like a day one contributor. It's going to make a Jesse Bates kind of contribution.
No, not at all.
So like that situation right there is a struggle, and then we all know that Eli Apple is literally a second quarterback on any other team.
No,
and they drafted DJ Turner, which is great. Congratulations, but like this dude's got to go up against some very good receivers.
Eli Apple's a third corner in my mind. He hasn't been able to hack it. He's very loud on social media.
And I like Cam Taylor-Britt. Like, he's not a bad guy, but like it's just they don't have a good secondary on this defense.
You have a lot of guys, but there's no guys that wow you. And don't have any wow factor.
And that's my argument of why I have the Cincinnati Bengals at 3. The reason why, and I could easily put the Ravens at 1, easily. My only issue with the Ravens at 1, though, is that injuries. This team has to stay healthy. Now, mind you, the reason why they had injuries, we addressed this in the offseason, was that they got rid of their training coach, and that was like an F, like their strength training coach and all that stuff was an F, and that I think that might have had a huge contribution to the injuries, and that maybe that they didn't know at all what they were doing.
And I hope so, because like I said, as much as I dislike the Ravens because they're in their same division and the Browns and all that stuff. Browns moved to Baltimore. I want Lamar to be healthy. I want a competitive division. I want everybody to be healthy, and let's see who can win.
I also think adding a guy like Odell, who's a very injury-prone guy, you say what you want. I get his upside. Yeah. If the guy comes out and plays like his third year in the NFL, he's going to be a stud. He's going to have the best season of his career, and that is phenomenal.
It's a high-risk, high-reward situation.
Correct.
That's exactly what they
and you're
did.
paying him $18 million, so it's a high risk. High risk.
I think that's highway robbery for Odell, but you know. They needed a running or a wide receiver, and they got your veteran wide receiver. But I think the more telling thing here is that they drafted Zay Flowers in the first round.
Hold on a second. Aaron's calling me out on fandom. This is not a fandom thing. This is very arguable because I don't like putting the Browns at 1. A lot of people know that I don't like putting the Browns at 1 because I don't want to be seen as the Browns, the homer, that guy. And I get it. I understand the wall. I do understand that I'm a Browns fan. It's not going anywhere. That's not my argument. But the only reason I'm putting this situation, the emphasis here on the Browns, is that if you look at what Deshaun Watson did from game 1 to game 5 when he came back, his QBR went from like 89 to like 126. Game 6, different story. Cincinnati Bengals had to win.
Yep.
Had to win. And Deshaun Watson, there was no reason for them to win this game. It was about trying things out in game 6 in my mind. So, like, if you look at his QBR dropping below 100, it's a totally different story. I also think you got to keep in mind, right? You got to keep in mind is that we were playing with Michael Woods as the number 3 receiver. Yeah. David Bell didn't do anything. So I think when you go get a guy like Michael Goodwin and you got Jakeem Grant back on kick return, and then you got the other situations with Amari Cooper, you trade for Elijah Moore, who's very underrated by a lot of people.
I love him.
Like Elijah Moore was supposed to be a number 2 on that Jets team, and then all of a sudden Elijah Moore just gets traded because the Jets have to go get every single wide receiver in the NFL just to appease Aaron Rodgers. So the reason why I have the Browns at 1 is because I do see Deshaun Watson having a huge bounce back year. You got a full offseason with your players. Last year, Jacoby got all the first round reps with the players in the offseason because they didn't know what Deshaun was going to be capable of. They gave Deshaun some preseason time where they said, hey, go out, see what you can do, get the rust off, knock it off, and you're good to go. Now Deshaun comes in with a full offseason. He comes in with a full wide receiver core. And then he comes in with Jerome Ford and Nick Chubb in the backfield. I still think there's a high potential that they sign Kareem Hunt for dirt cheap.
I think
because Kareem Hunt does not have a market, and Kareem Hunt, if he wants a ring, the place is the Browns, and that's it for him. So I think if he wants to stay on a team, your best potential is the Cleveland Browns.
And he's from here. So
he's from where we live at. So like it's huge. And then in that situation, I think that let's move on to the defensive side of the ball because the Ravens, right? The Ravens did a lot. Roquan, that signing is huge. And easily Roquan took that defense from 22 to like 12 to 8 because nobody could get outside of Roquan. Like he covered those edges like there was no tomorrow.
But you bring in Zadarius Smith for the Browns, which is a huge trade for what we traded nothing, essentially.
Yeah, but then you got Dalvin Tomlinson. We also brought in. We brought in Agbonya Okoronkwo out of the Texans, who was a huge impact piece.
You got Siaki Ika you drafted.
Siaki Ika out of
not Baylor.
No, I think it was Baylor.
Was it Baylor?
I think it was Baylor. I think it was
Baylor or Oregon.
No, I think it was Baylor. So it's Siaki Ika, who I love next to Dalvin Tomlinson. And then those guys just open up the line. I see. Here's what I see. And let's just take the fandom out of it. I see 40-plus sacks on this team combined, which is doubling what they did last year because Myles Garrett had majority of the sacks and then everybody else had like one. And that is not even a joke.
He was, we had no linebackers. Our entire linebacking core was injured. You got to remember that. So everything was getting to the next level there because, again, D tackles, you had nobodies at D tackles. Myles Garrett was, who else did you have on that defensive line? You had Myles Garrett. Who else?
You had many people on the defensive line, like you had Jadeveon Clowney, but like Clowney. Here's the thing: I think that I saw this argument. I was so pissed on Twitter. Joe Woods, Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator, and the Browns can't even get a good defense with him.
He stayed a year too long.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Stayed a year too long. Joe Woods did.
Joe Woods was not capable of taking these guys. Now, mind you, he got the best out of what he had. Because there wasn't anything like. Well, I'm not going to sit here and tout Tommy Togiai as the next coming of anybody on an interior line because Togiai, loved the kid out of Ohio State. Thought I was like rooting for him up and down. It's done nothing for the Browns. Done nothing.
Like I'm saying, there's no guys that have helped Myles Garrett or go back to the wow you. I hate to use it, but there's no guys that that have wowed you to help Myles Garrett on that defensive line last year. You go look at our defense. Denzel Ward was hurt for part of the year. Martin Emerson, a third-round pick, who we absolutely love. He was my 10th overall corner coming out of that draft that year, who's essentially going to be your number 2 now. And linebackers, you re-sign Anthony Walker. You bring some guys back. You hope to stay healthy, but that's the thing. What hurt the Browns the most is obviously, like we said, Deshaun Watson, suspension, didn't get to practice with the team. Injuries from D tackle to defensive line. Injuries for wide receiver core and guys who didn't show up.
Yeah, and my thing is I am not saying that the Browns are going to run away with this.
No, it's going to be a very close division between first and third. It's going to be about a 3-game difference.
And I think I told you this earlier. I think the Browns actually, they might say they have the 10th easiest schedule in the NFL.
It's not.
I do not like the Browns schedule.
It's
you have a week 5 bye. You play the Jets week 17. You play the Bengals week 18. I am not a fan of this situation.
Yeah, it's a very hard schedule in the beginning, and it's a very hard schedule.
Yeah, you play all divisional rivals at the beginning of the season, and then you go have a bye, and then you're like, hey, good luck out there for the next 17 weeks. So I don't like the Browns schedule. But here's what I will tell you. Deshaun Watson, if he puts up 80% of what Deshaun Watson did in 2020.
With Houston,
80%.
The Browns are a playoff
He's
team.
Easily going to win 13 games this year. Easily.
And this is Stefanski's last year because if they do not make the playoffs this year, Stefanski is gone.
Yeah, I would say Stefanski. I don't know about that because here's the thing. And it's funny because I'm going to tell you this, Aaron. Here's what I will tell you. I see the Ravens, the Bengals. It's what was the NFC
AFC South
Eagles division. NFC
Eagles
West?
No, NFC.
I think it's West.
Yeah, West.
I think it's West. I see it's the same situation. I see the AFC North. I see the Eagles, the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Browns all making the playoffs.
NFC East.
Because I have the East. Because
okay. you have the Eagles,
Dallas, and
the Giants.
San Francisco. No, that's Cardinals.
That's Cardinals.
Yeah,
you're thinking the West. The West is Cardinals, Rams, Niners, Seahawks.
Yeah,
and
you're
the
right.
East is Giants.
You're right.
Giants, Cowboys, Washington.
But I see 3 of these teams making it.
It's going to be a very tough division, and it's going to be fun to watch. This is essentially going to be what the AFC West is going to be. You're going to have a good year with the AFC West because you got Denver. You have
now, mind you, this is my power rankings. I'm not saying who's winning the division. These are power rankings
given by roster. This is roster power rankings, not where we think they lie.
This is on paper. And on paper, I believe the Browns have the best roster.
And you said it last show when your solo show. On paper, may not always.
It doesn't transcend to the field all the time.
And when as Browns fans, we know that. And yeah, we do it every year.
And it is super disappointing. Super disappointing when it doesn't transcend the field. But I'm glad that you also, Aaron, think that the Browns could win the division. Because to be honest with you, my argument for this division is who took step forwards, who took step back.
And like we said,
Bengals, step back. They lost so many pieces and didn't really add too much.
Steelers, step back
because that defense is getting older. I guess I can give them a slight step forward in the offense, but to be honest, that offensive line went from like 32nd to like 15th throughout the season.
Ravens, I'll say,
stayed there.
Yeah, they took a small step forward.
Well, I think they stayed there because
drafting Zay Flowers and adding Odell. I'll give them a small step forward.
Yeah, but you're also hoping that Lamar's coming back healthy, and because he has a contract, he'll play through injury.
And meanwhile, you got J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, who have both missed many games in the last couple of years.
Right. So I think the Ravens have always had good talent. It's just about keeping them healthy.
Yeah, J.K. has only had one healthy year, and that was his second year.
So if I were to argue between these two teams, it would be the Ravens and the Browns are battling for first and second. And the Bengals, I'm sorry, man. Like, Joe Burrow, love you, dude. You're going to struggle this year. Struggle this year.
The problem is their defense. Joe Burrow has been known. He's they're a heavy offensive team. They throw. And you're going to have to win shootouts. And I don't know if Joe Burrow, he's been shown that he can, but like in the playoff games against Kansas City, that was a shootout. He missed some throws. He missed some very, good.
I wonder if Joe Burrow was dealing with some type of injury towards the end of the season.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Because to be honest, like he was struggling towards the end of the season. But I mean, you're playing against better teams. I mean, that's typical.
But again, we talked about that with the Titans. You may win during the regular season, but it's a completely different animal when it comes to postseason.
All right, so obviously consensus. We'll go over that really quick. So Wheels. Run it down for me really quick and just give me what you got.
Obviously, the Steelers, like we said, they took a step back and maybe a small step forward on the offense. The Ravens, they stayed about the same, took a small step forward. Browns, I think they took a very big step forward on the defense. And the Bengals, I understand what you're saying, but history has a chance of repeating itself. But I put a lot of faith in Joe Burrow in that offense.
Yeah, and I completely understand that. I mean, to be completely honest with you. So obviously for me, I switched this up a whole bunch, and that's just because I really do think the Bengals do take a step back, and I think that the Ravens and the Browns take a step forward. And the only reason I give the Browns a step forward is because of the offseason. I think they played very well at the beginning of last season. They win 4 or 5 of those games if it's Deshaun Watson healthy and not Jacoby.
I mean, you beat the Jets if you don't give up 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, if you don't give up like 200 yards to Garrett Wilson in quarter 4.
And Joe Flacco.
Whatever. But so like I agree with you. Steelers are the worst team in this division, and
100%.
I mean they've done nothing but take a step backwards. Bengals, I have at 3. I think the Bengals will be a shocker for a lot of people because they are highly touted. Yeah. I think the Ravens signing Lamar Jackson was huge for them. I think it mellowed out that offense. And you have Bateman coming back. You drafted Zay Flowers. You signed Odell. You still have J.K. You still have Gus. I mean, defense only got better. I love their safety in Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, they have
only gotten better on that defense. So
But
to
injuries
me,
is what scares me. With
to
that
me,
team.
so the injuries is why I have them at 2 because I just staying healthy is a huge factor. And then the
JK.
Browns, they don't usually take a lot of injuries, but when they do, it's injuries that freaking matter, and it's always a cornerback, and they always struggle. But I will say, since Andrew Berry and Retard has been there, Stefanski have been there, the next man up mentality has worked for this team.
I mean,
it has worked for this
Martin
team.
Emerson stepped. I mean, he filled the shoes for Denzel Ward 100%, 100%. And I'm a huge fan of him. I talk about him all the time, but he showed everybody he was a 3rd-round pick, and he showed everybody he can be a corner.
Aaron, what are you talking about? That was a great game. If you're talking about the Bills Bengals game, we've had a lot to talk about that game.
Oh, with the heart attack game?
We've had a lot to talk about at that game. I will tell you this right now, and this will be for the next show because we're gonna have another show Wednesday next week, and the next show we're gonna finish the AFC and the NFL. Actually, I'll do this as my closing statement. I'll hold off a second. Is there anybody in the North or the South in the AFC that you like to look at in dynasty or fantasy-wise, and why do you like them? Those will be my questions. Now, you know me. I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan when it comes to fantasy.
I love T. Higgins. I like T. Higgins.
Well, let's look at rookies, right? Because I really... My comp, right, for Charlie Jones was a guy drafted in the 4th round who's not even getting drafted in 1 through 3 for a lot of people. He's going undrafted. I have him as comped at Julian Edelman, and I love this kid.
I like Tajay Spears a lot behind.
And I like Charlie Jones before he went to the Bengals. Remember?
You were high on Charlie Jones very much. You like the white wide receivers.
I do like white wide receivers. But, I just like Charlie Jones because he had the aspect and the talent of an Edelman. He's an Edelman guy.
Very good route runner.
Yep.
And he's dependable hands. He's a slot guy. I would have to think they would play him in the slot.
And think about why the Bengals lost their game. Because they struggled catching the ball in that game.
And Tyler Boyd, you had all those wide receivers, T. Higgins.
They were going with Irwin. I can't remember the kid's first name. The white
Irwin.
kid, long haired. They were going with that kid to win games, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, maybe we should probably dig in some more wide receivers.
I mean, you scheme for your top 2 wide receivers, and you see what your guys can do, and that's the next step. We're talking about step up mentality.
He's talking about that Jets Browns game where Garrett Wilson went off.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
That's
Joe
right.
Flacco actually threw for 400 yards that game.
The Browns are going to beat the Jets this year, Ryan.
Why are they playing back-to-back years? That wasn't supposed to happen.
The Texans are too, though. They're playing.
Well, that's
AFC.
AFC.
Again.
So, usually you play a different NFC division every year, and why are we playing the same division?
Finish it where they finished.
Stupid.
Where the Jets finished.
Stupid.
It's all right.
Stupid.
Aaron Rodgers will go back into his retreat. Aaron Rodgers, you guys will not make it to the Super Bowl.
So Bengals, I like Charlie Jones. You like Iosivas.
I like Iosivas, and I like Chase Brown a lot.
The Chase Brown is the one that I like because they got rid of P. Ryan. Chris Evans wasn't capable. You had that Travion kid that I don't remember his last name. I want to say Wicks or something like that.
Wicks or Travion Henderson or something like that.
I don't remember.
But I like Charlie Jones more than Iosivas from the aspect.
Well, Charlie Jones was drafted higher, right?
Yeah, so you're going to put more. You're going to put more.
Yeah.
Eggs in his basket to see what he has versus a 6th round.
I said on the last show that's a very weird draft though because a lot of very good wide receivers were taken super late.
Yeah.
And nobody was taken between late 3 and early 5. There was nobody in that area.
Bam, 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 bam. 5.
Yeah, it was weird.
Look at Xavier Hutchinson, who I love, and I think he's going to be very good on that Texans team.
You know what the Jets? You know what my favorite game of the year was, Aaron? Jets Patriots. It's my favorite game of the year, and it's because people just don't rate defenses the way they rate offenses.
No.
That game, what was it, 9-6?
Yeah.
That was my favorite game of the year, and I loved watching it. Loved watching it.
The Jets are like the Browns, though. They kind of always find a way to lose.
So, AFC North, right? So, anybody else you like? Do you like Tillman?
Steve liked Tillman a lot. I like Elijah Moore more
Can
than
he
Tillman.
make a roster spot?
Yeah, Tillman's going to make a roster spot, but I think Elijah Moore will be ahead of him on the roster.
Okay. No running backs in Cleveland that are rookies. No, nothing. Don't
Dorian
Do
Thompson.
not get hyped on this Darnell Washington shit in the Steelers. He's a blocking tight end. He's never going to touch the ball.
I don't like Darnell
Never going to
Washington.
touch the ball.
You have Pat Fryermuth, who is your offensive weapon, vertical threat. Darnell Washington is a guy that you're going to bring in as an extra blocker for running.
Joe, I agree. Browns can win 12 games, but so can the Ravens and so can the Bengals. And that's my issue with this division is that all three of these teams could all easily
Tillman
win
next
12
year.
games.
Exactly, Johnny. Tillman next year when maybe Cooper leaves.
Yeah. So let's the Steelers, nothing. Bengals, we already said. Browns, Tillman, that's it.
Ravens, there's really been nothing.
Zay, but he's obviously going in the first round for most drafts.
But other than that, there's nothing they really have.
Yeah, they didn't draft anything. A running back. Yeah, okay. Then Jacksonville, tight end Will Mallory, right?
Late draft pick. Maybe.
Or pick him up off the waiver wire. He might not even be drafted. He might not be drafted.
The tight ends that are going to get drafted are Luke Schoonmaker out of Dallas, Don Kincaid, Michael Mayer, the kid that
why can't they hold on, Joe? Why can't they all win 12? If you look at the roster, they all can win 12.
You
like
can all, even
if you lose to each other, you can all win 12. Yeah. Don't try to ask for my picks. I don't have a late second.
All right, so let's go to Jacksonville. Obviously,
the wide receivers. They didn't draft any.
So next we have the Titans for you. Tajay Spears, obviously, I'm super high on Tajay.
Oh, yeah, I'm high on Tajay, too.
I like him. If you have Derrick Henry, you should be drafting Tajay. Even if it's a little high, you risk that pick.
I like Josh Wiley because he's a big slot. Yeah, but I still love Jacozy Okonkwo over Josh Wiley because he has that 1 year rep with the
He's
team.
another guy that'll be a waiver wire pickup. Then you go to the Colts. Anthony Richardson, he's probably going to be a first-round pick. Most likely, he's a top 5 pick in most of the dynasties I've watched.
But you know what you did talk about in the Colts was Evan Hall. Evan Hall is a waiver wire pickup because he's going to probably step into that. It Deion Jackson is probably going to lose his spot to Evan Hall. But you still have Zach Moss there. That's my other issue.
But Zach Moss is another guy he's like Chris Evans. He's never been able to prove that next man up mentality we were talking about. He hasn't been able to prove he can be the backup.
Joe, that's my argument. If they all lose games to each other, they can still go 12-4 or 12-5.
Yeah. If you split games,
it's a 17-game season. If you split, you can all go 12-5.
If everybody splits with who
so they all
twice,
can go 12-5.
Yeah.
That's literally my argument. I like math. We can do this all day. You can't give me enough alcohol to fail a math problem.
You play everybody in your division twice, which that adds up to how many games?
3 games. If you lose one, win one, you get 3.
Yeah.
So you lose 3.
Because
that's
6 total.
So that's 3 games.
That means you have to win 9 of the 12 remaining.
Right.
And lose no more than 2. I'm not very good at math.
I agree. I agree that all 3 make it, and that was my argument to why it's hard to rank any one of these teams as the number 1 team. Because I think if I were to do a power ranking for the entire AFC, I think all 3 of these teams make it in my top 10.
Yeah. And I said from the first to the 3rd team in the AFC North, it's a 3-game difference that separates all 3.
All 3 of these teams make it in my top 7 because top 7 make it to the playoffs. Yeah. So in the AFC, all 3 of these teams will make it in my top 7.
The AFC is it's going to be a very fun year for the entire AFC because of the young quarterbacks you have.
So this is the team where I think we could find some sleepers, right, is the Texans. Because the Texans did a lot at rookies. So how do you feel about Xavier Hutchinson? I just like to ask you this question.
I love Xavier Hutchinson, obviously. I hope he makes a roster spot considering he's a 6th-round pick. He is kind of with the wide receivers they have. He is kind of on the cusp, but I think he's going to... What kind of
liquor are you buying because you don't drink?
I don't know. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
I'm confused, Aaron.
He said challenge accepted.
But I love Xavier Hutchinson. I think...
So do you draft Tank Dell over Xavier Hutchinson, or you draft Xavier Hutchinson over Tank Dell?
I take Tank Dell over Xavier Hutchinson all day. And that's because of where they drafted him.
I'm trying to find it.
And Tank Dell was a little bit lower than Xavier Hutchinson, but for where they drafted him, I believe he was a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, Tank Dell was drafted in the 3rd. Xavier was drafted in the 6th.
You're going to put a lot more. Can't think of. emphasis into a guy you drafted in the third versus a sixth.
I agree. But it all depends on the offseason. Like,
yeah. But like
I
we
just
said,
hit puberty.
The Texans have a ton of wide receivers on that team. I mean,
they do.
I think Robert Woods will be cut mid-season.
Robert Woods is old, and I can't believe they. By the way, I didn't know Noah Brown came from Ohio State. Didn't I say that earlier?
I did not know.
I did not know that. But they still have Nico Collins, Noah Brown. Like we just said, they drafted
John
Tank Dell in the
Mechie.
third. They have John Mechie. I think they drafted him in the second.
Yeah,
second
year.
or third last year. And he's coming off like leukemia and stuff like
first,
that.
Actually. And then you have, obviously, Xavier Hutchinson. So
Yeah,
that might be your wide receiver room.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Robert Woods makes it.
Yeah, he'll make it.
But I agree where, like, he might just be there as a veteran guy to teach these guys.
He might fall off week 8, week 9.
They do have sleepy Amari Rodgers, which is Amari. I don't.
Rodgers is ass.
Green Bay got rid of him for a reason. So
another guy who could never make it and hack it, pretty much.
And they didn't touch running back in that state, so like there's not much going on there. All right, so let's do it, Wheels. Let's close it off the show like we normally do. What do you got for me for today?
So obviously, guys, I really like in Dynasty are going to be John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson, Tank Dell, Tajay Spears, Will Mallory, Daniel Bellinger's we're not even talking about the NFC, I'm sorry. Cedric Tillman, Elijah Moore, all guys I love. Now, if you're going defensive side, and I don't know, some people have IDP leagues, I would go pick up Joey Porter. I think he's going to be good. I'd go pick up, who was the outside linebacker that the Texans took?
Will Anderson?
Will Anderson. I go pick him up. Obviously, see all these quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, you're going to draft those guys. They're first-round draft picks all day long.
Yeah, especially in
Zay Flowers, another first-round draft pick. And in most leagues, I took him in the first.
Is it all you got for today? Is that your takeaways for today?
That's my takeaway.
All right.
Dynasty talk.
All right, so my takeaways for today are don't sleep on the AFC North. Wasn't I going to say something earlier? I completely forgot what I was going to say.
Keep talking. I'll try.
I was going to say, I completely forgot what I was going to say. Aaron's got me all worked up. Aaron's like flipping a coin every time I talk. Like, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to go this way. So I'm just trying to figure out where Aaron's going with his takes at this point.
Aaron he's hot takes. He's worse than me.
Joe, I don't discount Belichick. I still think Belichick is capable of making it into the playoffs, but it doesn't mean that I don't.
Belichick has been proven that it was a 60-40 relationship where it was, I'll go 65-35.
It's 50-50. It's 50-50.
It's not 50-50.
It's 50-50. Mac Jones almost made it to the playoffs.
With the next show.
Yeah, because that's we will be going over the AFC the next show. So I think that was what I was going to talk about. We're going to go into the AFC East and West.
AFC West
we're going to go into the AFC West.
The West.
We're going to go into the West. We're going to the AFC East and West the next show. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing we did today. And we're going to do this next Wednesday. And then we might have some sleepers in that draft. But if you guys have any questions about who you like over the next guy, let us know because we'd like to get into that. I'd like to dig deeper into it, but no one's kind of give us any questions like who you like over who and what's the situation.
Go follow the Facebook page, obviously. Like, subscribe, share.
Yeah. Also, I will tell you guys that I have my dynasty draft this weekend, so there will be a lot of things, and I am digging deep into these late rounds. A lot of people don't understand that because we put a lot of time and effort in these drafts.
You need to.
So I think the late rounds is where it's at. The mid rounds, you're going to be shocked. Some of these guys are going to be busts in the mids.
Also, so Clayton Tune. Go pick up Clayton Tune because Kyler Murray is going to miss at least half the year. Colt McCoy had off-season surgery, and if Colt McCoy struggles, they're going to turn to Clayton Tune.
And Tune's going undrafted in most leagues.
Yes, but I picked him. Aiden O'Connell, and Jake Haener all up because in one of my leagues we have like 7 taxi
picked up
spots.
Jake Haener.
Yeah.
You
and
sick
Aiden
bastard.
O'Connell.
You
Why not?
sick bastard.
I'm going to pick up the quarterbacks. Nobody wants them.
All right, so yeah, I think that's kind of all I got. If you guys can, please go like, subscribe on Twitter, follow us. We have one of the guys on the show kind of run our Twitter, and he's keeping everything updated. Also, we also announce all of our shows on Twitter, and we also announce them on Facebook to let everybody know. So if you follow us on Facebook, most of those socials are, you know what? Hold on.
And you can hit the
There
watch.
they are. All of our socials are right there for the people on the show. So that gives you guys a heads up, and you can like and subscribe to all of us. If you have any questions, if you have any DMs that you want to give us, please send it to us. Anything you want to talk about on the shows, please send us to us because we will go over that. We will dig deep in depth, and we will also communicate with you guys. That's the difference between our show and the NFL and everybody out there.
We want
is
feedback, and we will listen to feedback.
We want feedback, and we want to talk to you guys. I mean, that's what's missing nowadays is just having a conversation with a friend and talk about football. We're all liars. We're all assholes, but we all love the sport.
100%.
I don't know if I'm a liar, but I have a habit of being hyperbolic.
I think we both have a habit of being that.
So that being said, you guys have a wonderful day, and you guys, please
Thank you, Joe.
enjoy your week, and I will see you next Wednesday.
Later.